Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video is yet another new ASIC coming from IB-Link yet again. This is for the Kadena algorithm. This is the IB-Link BMK3 Max. So we're going to compare it to the competition. We do have the specs, we do have the pricing. It is available now actually. So we'll compare it to the predecessor, we'll compare it to the competition and just see how it stacks up, right? That way we can see if this thing is going to be something that's going to be worthwhile or for us to keep our eye on or something to kind of just let it run, right? So we'll talk about it, we'll discuss, and see if it makes sense, right? So if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned to get to this thing. So let's just get right to it. BMK3 Max, it is available on their website. A lot of the vendors, distributors are going to start listing it on their website here pretty soon. Did see like Miner Bros had the listing, they had it as sold out. Similar price point though. So here it is. So right off the rip, full-size ASIC at $2,000 looks somewhat appealing, right? That is until we start comparing it to things, right? And we're going to see quickly why it's $2,000, right? So specs, 82 terahash, 3200 watts. So again, this is a full-size ASIC. So the problem here, as far as like, you know, getting it for speculative reasons and such, is just at that high of a wattage, you're going to be paying that out of pocket. So even if you're in the mindset like, oh, I'm going to get it, I'm going to wait for the bull run, that's a hefty sum to pay, right? It's one thing with the little box miners or the little light miners, things of that sort. Somewhat doable, right? With this guy though, that's a pretty hefty difference, right? So 82 terahash, 3200 watts. Let's compare it to the predecessor that came out last year. So the BMK3 came out last January, was announced after the KA3. The KA3 didn't officially make it into people's hands until around February, right? So people who did get it initially, they were happy for about a month, and then reality set in when the KA3 was in people's hands and things changed quite drastically, quite quickly, right? This is one why when we talked about it, we said even though the profitability might look appealing right now, it's not going to make sense once the KA3 came, and we all know what happens there, right? So comparing it though, right? So this previous model was 70 terahash it's rated at 3300 watts, right? So 70 terahash, 3300 watts. And when we look at the efficiency, it was about 47 joules a terahash, whereas the new guy, it's 39 joules a terahash. So there is an 18% increase in efficiency. So at least it is an upgrade. It isn't something where they just added more chips and just called it a max. There is a slight increase in efficiency, right? The problem here, though, is the KA3 is just so much better still, right? Even a year later, I mean, it's super evident here when we look at, on Mine the ASIC, all the KDA ASICs, okay? Literally, the only one that is profitable at a 10-cent kilowatt hour is still the KA3. And this is even factoring in the little 170 watt box miners, okay? That's pretty astounding and just shows you how much of a beast the freaking KA3 was, right? So when we compare it to the KA3, it's a pretty easy comparison because it's literally twice the efficiency, like almost exactly to the T. Okay, again, the K3 Max, 82 terahash, the KA3, 166, so less than half. So this guy's more than double, just slightly, we could essentially call it double, and pretty much the same wattage, right? This one's 3154. And this guy's 3200, so it's essentially twice the hash rate for the same wattage, right? And again, this is a release that came out a year later, okay? This is why we were so bullish on this guy when it came out, because it was so much ahead of the competition. And that was a big part of our value proposition with it initially, right? Our mindset was initially that even a year later, at best, Goldshell and IB-Link might be able to match it, right? And in this case, with IB-Link, they're still not even close, right? It remains to be seen with Goldshell. We'll see if they do have an updated one sometime this spring, summer. Realistically, I wouldn't think so. The smart move for both of them, even with IB-Link, they should have just waited until the second half or towards the end of this year to release this thing, right? I mean, they can release it now, but realistically, if we do start seeing some bullish price action towards the end of this year, they'd be able to settle it for quite a bit more, right? So it's good for us if you're interested, but realistically, it's just right now it's not appealing at all, just because again, this guy demolishes it still a year later, right? Luckily, it's been working in our favor. So far, it does not look like Bitmain will release a revised version this year, right? Overall, it hasn't been the most popular thing, not super profitable. Prices have come down pretty substantially because, again, when this guy did come out, initially it was very high, right? That pre-order window leading up to it, people were still paying above MSRP, which we were trying to release videos telling people it's not a good idea, not a good idea. People quickly saw why, right? So it's one of those things, but they did have that price drop over the summer, and that's when it became appealing once again, right? So realistically, though, a lot of people were still not looking at it, though, because, again, profitability was so low. It was only like barely above break even, depending on your electric rate, right? For a long period of time, this thing was only just a couple of bucks a day, right? So that kind of worked in our favor, though, because we can see the peak here, right? This guy was getting in people's hands in February. Early February, certain people did start getting their batches in, and we see the monumental growth. By the end of March, I got mine the beginning of March, but by the end of March, most people who had pre-ordered got theirs already, right? So at this point, it hit about 530 petahash, and we can see the drop-off in the hash rate here. So most likely what it was is that this was all the KA3s, and then this decline was all the inefficient hardware just finally giving up and unplugging, right? So think all the little box miners, all the light miners, all of those guys finally unplugging. And we did finally find this low around June, and we just stayed in that range, right? So during that time, when it was not appealing, that was the time to get in, right? Because then at that point, we had 6 solid months of mining at a fairly decent yield. Okay, during that time, we were averaging between 20 to 22 KDA a day for anybody who had a KE3. Now, though, because we did have this freaking little pump, which again is nice to see, definitely see it. It does give you more confidence in the project. But now maybe you guys can start seeing why I was kind of like, oh, I would rather it be bearish and rather it be barely above break even, because again, at that point, it's not appealing. Even if this thing's available, which it was available this entire time, for like 2,500, 2,700 all day, right? But now that had this pump, now people are trying to get in, and realistically the time was last year, right? So it's not to say that it's too late, it's just the most optimal time is when it's boring. Again, that was a big part of our strategy in the miners we picked, is that picking those boring ones, you're kind of able to maximize the amount of yield for a longer period of time. But again, now that we did see this pump right around Christmas time, it did hit a peak of about $1.42 is where it topped that out. So it was a nice little pump considering we were at 40 something cents in October. Okay, in 2 months it did like a 3x. It's pretty good. Ultimately it has retraced and it's been hovering in this range. We'll see if it goes any lower, but it's been right around the dollar point, right? So it's just been chilling out there. We'll see what ends up happening. But again, because of that pump, the rewards went down a good amount, right? Rewards went down because again, we went from about 400 and change petahash up to new all-times high. We're at 685, right? So there was about a 40% decrease in rewards. So again, we went from like 21, 22 down to like 14, right? And it's just continuing to go down, and it's going to continue to go down because again, people who got on the hype train ordered theirs and they still haven't gotten theirs, right? So there still are a lot of orders going out. So it is going to continue to go up and probably find a new peak, probably in like the 750 range. And then chances are it may retrace a bit again, because what's going to happen again, because of that pump, what happened? A lot of these guys, the box miners, the light guys, they all plug back in also, right? But now, again, the price did retrace, but because the difficulty went up so high, even if we do reach these price points again, even if we go back up to like $1.30, $1.40, it's not going to be as profitable as what it was back then, just because again those rewards did go down a good chunk, right? So something to factor in when things do pump. But it's not to say that it's too late either, right? It just really depends on how bullish you are on Kadena, right? If you are bullish on it, you think we're going to go up, because it is one that did go down extremely, right? It was one of the harder hit ones during this bear market. So if you are bullish in it, it does have a lot of potential upside, right? So because again, this thing did peak at about $25, right? So it's not to say that it's going to reach that amount, because remember, the market cap, you have to account for all the inflation that has happened so far and that's going to continue to happen over the next year, right? So depending on where your price point's at, like me, I'm very conservative with my like price predictions. I don't really do price predictions because I'm just basing it off of the majority of the time, it's like a fraction of the previous all-time high, right? So in a sense, I kind of like lowball myself, but that's where I set my accumulation goals, right? So like, for example, it'd be easy to say, oh yeah, I think it's going to meet all. It could, right? Anything could happen. My price target is only like $4.50, right? If it hits that, I'll be beyond happy, right? Because at that point, yes, that does sound like, you're kind of bearish on it. I mean, right now, because it's at $1, but the thing, it went up a good amount. Just in October, we were at 40 something cents, right? So like anything under 50 cents, I was stacking a little bit on top of it also, right? Because in reality, I'm trying to double down because I'm still trying to make up for that thing back there, because again, that got wrecked by the KA3, and ended up doubling down, getting that KA3, and then kind of tripling down by like also DCAing on top of it. Hopefully we do get good price action. Again, as long as if we make $4, I'll be beyond happy. If it hits at least 250, I'll be more than good, right? So we'll see ultimately where it ends up going. Realistically, I think it'll do beyond that. I think we will do the $5 plus, right? Right now it's been doing good. They did have this rebrand. They are starting to market. That was one of the things we mentioned a few months ago. They did hire a CMO, a chief marketing officer. So that's why we had this big rebrand, everything going on. They are talking about it more. They're trying to get more projects in. Hopefully they need to start doing like hackathons or releasing grants. They got to get more projects in, right? They got to get people to build on top of it. And then we'll see, because at this point it is fairly well developed, but now it's at the time where it's like we got to get actual action on it. We got to start getting more people to build on it and for it to actually grow, right? For it to become usable. We'll see how it turns out this year. But even just on the speculation front, if it just rides the wave of the bull market, I could easily see it doing a 5x from here, right? In reality, who knows, right? Don't base anything off of my price points, but that's where I base my accumulation goals off of, right? But as we look at the price of the KA3, it's a little bit higher now, right? Again, the time was back then when it was like $2,500. Ultimately now there is another version now, actually. Did notice that there is a 173 terahash model that is coming now also. So keep that in mind. So although we didn't get like a KA3 Plus or Pro or something like that, it does seem like the change this year was just that new model, right? So it's at $3,000. The one that does have it in stock is like BT Miners. They have the 166 at 35, the 173 at $100 more at 36, right? So realistically, if you were to look at one, I would go for the 173 because that it's going to be a new batch, right? And it's not going to be a model that's been sitting in a warehouse for the past 8 months unsold. That now that it's popular, now it's coming out, right? That way you're getting something most likely a little fresher, right? Something to think about there. But ultimately, though, going back to the K3 Max, it's too inefficient still, right? We'll see what ends up happening. We'll see if they release anything else. Because also at the same time, it's kind of hard to tell if this was something that they just decided to release because we did have this pump. Although it's kind of throwing me off because it was such a delayed reaction if it was, right? It would kind of make sense if they had this guy produced not too long after the K3 and it just kind of sat in storage or something. But you would think that they would have done this like a month and a half, 6 weeks ago or something, right? The fact that they're releasing it now signals that it might be their current gen. So at this point, though, it's spend the extra $100,000 and get the big guy, get the KA3, right? So it's not to say that this guy is going to be fully irrelevant, just like we said with the K3 last year. Depending on the price action we get, this guy could make sense in a year from now, right? In a year from now, if Kadena does go up to $4, $5, $6, guess what's going to happen to the KA3? Number one, prices go through the roof. Number two, most likely a new model will probably be debuting around that time, right? This guy may be more appealing because of the price point. But just factor in that if Kadena's at $5, $6, this thing ain't going to be $2,000 either, right? So that's the risk versus reward thing, right? So like my play with ASICs from the get-go has just been get the latest and greatest, get it right off launch. That way you can maximize the amount of time you're able to mine profitably before the next bigger thing comes out, right? That's kind of the hard part with ASICs, and that was the learning lesson with like that guy, for example, right? So when I see the potential of that happening, that's why I call things like high risk. Like A lot of people have been shilling that new SIA coin miner, and it's just like they're not mentioning the fact that it's on old hardware, right? To me, that is extremely, extremely, extremely risky. Because if somebody were to release an updated, version with like newer chips, you're going to have the same kind of destruction with that, right? So it's just, please keep that in mind, guys. Do your research on these ASICs, right? That's been a big part of this channel, is just educating people in that department and what can happen, right? Again, ask any of the people who purchase Gold Shell Kadena miners and we will tell you exactly what it's like, right? Learn from our mistakes, learn from what we have seen, and expand your horizons, guys, right? Educate yourselves, assess that risk versus reward, look at different things. But again, this thing may have its time eventually. It's just not right now. And it's probably not going to be the next few months. It's maybe a year from now, right? Maybe towards the end of the year, whenever we get this bullish action, if we get this bullish action, right? We're saying all this stuff, but in reality, who knows, right? Who knows how high we go? Maybe we do go crazy. Maybe we don't. Right? We have to see what ends up happening. We can just hope for the best, but at this point we are committed. We are here. We are in there. I'm personally bullish on Kadena, so like for me, the timing of it made perfect sense. The fact that it was a project I was already following made perfect sense, and that's why I went with this guy. I went with the K7. I went with the miners that I did because of that, right? It fit the bill. I pre-ordered it super early. Right now, it's been panning out. Even with this, super big drop with the rewards because of the difficulty, it's still doing its thing. At this point, a lot of the risk is now gone because it's essentially paid itself off, right? So at this point, we're now working on paying that guy off, essentially. So we'll see how it goes. We're going to keep our eyes on it. We're going to see if we get any other miners, right? The other big thing would be if Gold Shell releases anything, which again, I kind of doubt in a way, but then you never know, right? Like this release doesn't even make a whole lot of sense, but again, it's something that they made, they manufactured, and at this point, they got to at least try to sell it. Maybe people with free power, I guess, right? But I mean, realistically, at the end of the day, it makes way more sense to just go with the KA3, right? So let me know what you guys think. Are you guys interested? Did any of you guys, I know some of you guys unfortunately did get a K3. I know I saw some of you guys making comments in some of the videos I did after. It is what it is, right? At this point, all you can do is it happened. It's here. It doesn't make sense to sell it for pennies on the dollar. It could have made sense if you sold it. Like I was considering even selling mine, even for like a rock bottom price back when the prices were here, because technically you could have sold it and just purchased some there and that could have made up for it, right? It's just like right now to be plugging in and stuff, it's not making a whole lot of sense. But again, right now, at this point, that guy I'm considering a huge L, definitely a big learning lesson. If we do ever fully recover, maybe it'll be profitable, maybe it'll be worth something. Who knows? But at this point, the KA3 is panning out. We learned our lesson. We move on. We continue to grow. We continue to expand, and we continue to stack, right? So again, guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think, what you guys are doing. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching, and I am out.